Good morning, everybody. I'm so happy to be here with you all today. Happy Sunday. It's rainy, it's cozy, it's sweet out here in New York, and it's kind of the perfect day for a cozy little writing stream like we got right now. We are gonna do some writing, but today is also gonna be a little bit of an intellectual exercise. I'm gonna be sharing a bit about the different research that I sort of do as I'm working on my projects, and we're gonna have a sort of intellectual discussion. This is the 17th episode of Make Myth. Pretty cool that we're still here. We're still doing great. We're still thriving. We're continuing to get better. As you can see, we have a little bit of a new format. The black minimalistic look is something I think that might work well for us as a sort of like museum sort of aesthetic. And let's hop in. Today we're going to talk about whether the earth is female. We're going to talk about that question, what it actually means. We're going to define what female is and what female is not in this context. As you can see, obviously, we used an asterisk next to female. Can be a really charged word. What is a woman is a whole like right-wing talking point. That is not what we're talking about here at all. We are talking about archetypes. We're talking about symbols, and we are going to be focusing on our own version of female, and that's going to help us to define this and to actually answer this question in the best way that we possibly can. And ultimately, we're going to take a look today from a mythological perspective, whether that's true or not. There are further perspectives, including religion and science, which we'll take a look at in the future in next week's session. But today, we're going to be looking at it from a mythological perspective, from the stories that we tell about how the universe was created. So these are called cosmogonic myths, and a cosmogonic myth just means that it's about the story of the creation of the universe. And so after that, we'll take a little bit of a break. We'll do a little bit of a writing exercise live. We'll talk through some stuff. It'll be a nice little conversation. And then maybe we'll play some games after. Not 100% sure if I'll still be up for that. I was up early getting prepared for the stream. We've got an entirely new setup. I'm currently at my parents' house, not fully settled in a place yet, but do have a more settled location than when traveling around Athens. Let's dive in. So, is Earth a woman? I think that this is Earth a female? Let's dive in. So, is Earth a woman? I think on one hand you could say, is Earth a female? On one hand you could say, does that question make any sense? Is that like asking, is Tuesday tall? It is not. It's kind of almost the wrong word for a planet, for a rock, a spheroid flying through space and spinning through space. And at the same time, there is a lot of evidence point to it having a feminine nature. And it's a topic that has continued to come up and continued to persist across cultures throughout time. And it's one that is prevalent even today. And so I think that it's worth taking a look from both perspectives today. And when we're comparing the Earth as a female, what we're really talking about is archetypal. And when you talk archetypal, what is it that we specifically mean? I really mean kind of the Jungian version of archetype, which I don't want to get too esoteric or erudite or abstract here, but what he's trying to say is, what he says is that there's these kind of archetype, these stories that always kind of happen, that are recurring, that happen in the collective subconscious, and they create these sort of archetypes that keep persisting in stories across cultures that have never met before, because they're like kind of baked into the human way that we perceive reality. And so when we're talking about archetypal, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about eternal recurrence. So things that continuously happen again and again and again. And so when we're talking about female in this context, we're also going to be talking about childbirth, right? So actually being able to birth a child, something from in you, gestating, right, within you, and then actually having that child leave you and emerge into the world. So that's going to include anything to do with a womb, right? And so those are the sort of archetypes that we're looking for with regards to childbirth. Another thing that we're going to be looking at is cyclical fertility, right? So obviously women have their lunar menstrual cycles, and Earth has its seasonal solar cycles as well as its lunar tides. And so we are going to be looking at that parallel as well. And then another one we're going to be looking at is embodied nourishment. And what that means is, obviously, of the earth gives life of itself. It creates fruits, it creates plants that we can all eat. And so it is it is embodied in its nourishment. And obviously, women can create their own milk with which to nourish others. And so that's what we're talking about when we talk about archetypal embodied nourishment. And so next, we're going to talk about receptivity, and this is the most abstract of them, but it's a mythological concept of kind of this that there is an actor and an acted upon, and in this case, Earth is almost always the acted upon. It is the receiver, and we will walk through a little bit more of that. But that's another element from a mythological perspective that is going to inform what we're talking about here today. And so let's keep cooking. So what is a female not going to be equal to with regards to today's lesson? So the first thing, and most obviously I want to make clear, is that we're not talking about a woman here, because we're talking about a planet, and these are just not one-to-one things. Obviously, Earth is not a human, and so this is not about womanhood. And I really hope that we can detach this conversation from womanhood, specifically human womanhood, as much as possible today, for the sake of generalizations to a universal construct level versus the level of human societies. And so again, that's also going to include chromosomes, right? So this is not about our DNA. This is about archetypes, and it's not about societal roles. And has nothing to do with modern identity vernacular. And that's very important. I'm going to keep reinforcing this. I just know that these are hot button topics. I'm not here to step on any toes. I am not a gender studies person, but I have read a lot of that stuff in this research, and a lot of it's very interesting. And I really do hope that if anybody has opposing opinions, that you come at me in the comments in earnest. I would love to change my opinion. I would love to be open-minded. I will respond to every single comment. So with that, let's continue on with our lecture here. Earth is a female from a myth perspective. So let's dive in on that. But from a mythological perspective, I think that the strongest evidence that points to Earth being a female is the Sky-Earth dyad, which I'll explain what that is in a second. In 40% of cases, roughly, it feminizes the Earth. And so what is a Sky-Earth dyad? Essentially, in a lot of these, over a huge amount of these cosmogonic origin and creation myths, the sky and the earth are considered separate, and they're sort of separate deities. And oftentimes one is a mother, one is a father, one is a daughter, one is or they're lovers, etc. But in these cases wherein you have the sky and earth duality of deities, 94% of the time, and this is according to the Witzel study from the Oxford Unity Press, Origins of World's Mythologies. And what you can find is that 94% of these instances will make the sky masculine and the earth feminine, which I find is very interesting. That is statistically improbable. It's extremely unlikely that it would be that consistent if the stories were originating, let's say, entirely haphazardly, and people were just looking at the sky and kind of projecting and adding a random concept to it, a gendered concept to it. That 94% number would make it really difficult to explain. Now, when we talk about this number, we have to keep in mind that the sky, that the sky, not every single mythology is in a sky or a dyad, right? So this is a subset of cosmogonies, and we need to just recognize that as we're working on this, that although in this dyad, which is so important and is especially important in the Indo-European language, which from which our language came and from which the Judeo-Christian traditions arose, we really get a lot of these dyads, and there's just so many examples to count. We've got, Rangi and Papa from the Maori. We've got the Oranos and Gaia for the Greeks. We've got Dyaus and Prithvi from the Vedics. We've got just too many to read out. It's going to be boring, and I'm going to butcher the explanations because I read better than I speak when it comes to these things. Obviously, a lot of these names are quite difficult to pronounce, but we can really see that this dyad is extremely popular, and it's also borderline monomythic. And in addition, it also demonstrates almost always one of the first severances, right? There's almost always a distinction between the skies and the earth, the extraterrestrial, the spaces and the plane with which all of us walk. Okay, and so I think we've really made that point clear, but it is probably the most important argument from the mythology perspective. Now, if we talk about the second point, which is that it crosses 15 plus unrelated language families, this is extremely interesting because when we talk about language families, we're talking about like beyond even like Latin based. There are these earlier traces of how languages emerge from origins peoples by looking at certain grammatical contexts, by certain translations of certain words. They can trace lineage of these, and so the most important of which were like the Indo-European languages, which created like Latin and Greek, etc. But also the Semitic languages, which includes like Hebrew, Aramaic, etc. Sino-Tibetan, which is Chinese. All of these feminize Earth when they speak about her. Every single one of them. So that is an incredibly interesting point, which is that these completely unrelated languages, these language families that grew up independently of one another, actually all ended up using feminine language to describe the earth. Now, what makes this even more interesting is that in a lot of these languages, for example, the Sino-Tibetan languages like Chinese, they actually don't have the concept of having to gender every single noun, right? So it's actually not a just this concept that, if you have to pick one, then you would pick feminine because it's more feminine than it is masculine. In some of these languages, they actually don't have that structure wherein you would need to actually prescribe every single noun a language, every single noun one of them. And so that makes it even more interesting. Now, the last point is that it also crosses across varied societal structures. So obviously there are people who could say that it's, a reflection of a patriarchal culture or something like that. But this has also been proven to be showing up in matriarchal cultures like the Iroquois as well. And so this is a very interesting mythology. It's not entirely universal. And we're going to go into what we think is happening next here. Sorry. There we go. Just cleaning this up a little bit for you all. Looks good. Okay. So Now we're going to continue moving on with the opposite. So we just took the side from a mythological perspective of why it is that we think why it might be argued that the earth is female. From a mythological perspective, we talked about how in the sky earth dyad, 94% of the time, the earth is the feminine party. We talked about how across 15 plus unrelated language families, the word is the earth is feminized, even in those that don't apply feminine apply pronouns to different nouns. We also talked about how it crosses varied societal structures, including patriarchies and matriarchies, etc. And so it has a huge amount of pervasiveness. And now we're going to talk into the arguments against that before we kind of draw our own conclusions here. What is the argument that against the fact that the earth is a female from a mythological perspective? Again, we're not talking about religion today. We're going to talk about that next week. We're not talking about science today either. We're going to talk about that the week after that. So from a mythological perspective, we have to, when we talk about the dyad as our primary, the sky earth dyad as our primary evidence, right, the 94%, we have to recognize that actually within that dyad there's a major inversion. There's three inversions. There's these guys in the Himalayas, but the primary inversion, which is one that can absolutely not be ignored, is Egypt. So when in their sky earth dyad, Geb is the male and he's the sky, and Nut is the female and she's the sky, and Geb is the male and he's the earth. So it's entirely inverted. And when you're talking about Egypt, we're talking about, one of the most influential and powerful mythologies that has held the test of time. They built the pyramids. They had their pharaohs. They had methods for preserving information that give us a huge amount of insight into their mythology. And so the fact that they have an inversion within their dyad, there is an explanation for that, which is to say that for them, they live in a desert, and so, the fruit bearing like rains would be more motherly, but I don't really buy that. I think that it is definitely something that needs to be brought up in this context, that you really can't say that it is universal if you have Egypt as a primary as a primary inverter, and it's not even like they're just different. They are within the dyad and they are entirely inverted. So it's definitely not universal, even though it's 94%. We have a major one there. Major cultures don't participate. This is TLDR is pretty much all of Australia and most of sub-Saharan Africa doesn't have this concept. They don't gender the earth at all, or the earth is not a mother. It's just not a thing. And the next and much more interesting one is that if you are arguing against this concept from a mythological perspective, then you need to be able to consider the Abrahamic religious perspective, because there's roughly a 54% chance, even higher, since you're probably American and watching in English, that if you're watching this, you are either a Christian, a Jew, or a Muslim. And if you are, then this argument, and you're devout, then this argument would have a pretty clear answer, actually. It would have a pretty clear answer about whether the earth is feminine if you are a devotee of the Abrahamic religions. And why is that? Because we have a extremely consistent creation myth across all three of those Abrahamic religions, wherein God created the heavens and the earth, right? And so if you have God as the only deity, then it makes sense that earth is not a deity. And if she is created as a terrestrial plane by which that is just populated and wherein things are happening, versus a distinct, feminine entity that has any sort of agency, that has any sort of personality, that has any sort of femininity, really, then you cannot. It is not in line with the world that God created according to the Abrahamic religions, that the earth is like the earth mother. Okay, because God did not create it that way. And there are there is like the Ruach in the Zohar, and there is this feminine spirit that was actually there at creation, and that was the spirit watching over the spirit of the deep, and has this divine feminine element that we get from a lot of the other mother goddesses. So she does show up in some of the Jewish mysticism. and yet she's not the Earth, she's not the planet, and so she doesn't really count. And so I think that this is something that when we do talk about this, we need to reckon with, which is that the Abrahamic religions absolutely would not agree with this concept of a Mother Earth in the way that of Earth being female in that specific way that we consider it, in the same way that I don't think we could say with confidence that they would say that the Earth is female in the same way that God is the Father, right? Where they feel very confident. We've got Grimy for, are you using Obsidian? I am using Obsidian. Grim Leafer, this is my first day using Obsidian live. The reason being that it helps me with these, I can use these slides in it. I can use all these plugins. I'm pretty techie, so I'm able to, I used to use Notion, but it's not really good for slotting into these different window sizes, because what you'll find, Grimhaver, is that some of these I've designed this presentation so that it will fit quite well in a vertical video clip for little clips at the end here. I'm going to be experimenting with that. I've never posted a single vertical video clip, so if you follow me on Instagram or something, maybe you'll see how I do with my first one. Also, welcome, Grimleaver. I've never seen you here before. It's great to have you. We are a new stream where this is our 17th stream, as you may be able to tell from the title. But we're loving it. We're going the distance. We're having a lot of fun working on this project. And yes, I am using Obsidian. I am new to Obsidian, but I do feel like it might be the right tool for me given my live writing. I never had any issues with my other tools. So smart. I love Obsidian. Yeah. I wasn't having any issues with Notion, but the thing about Obsidian is that like I have this extended slides feature. You see how I have this width and property here? I can change the width and height. Like it really allows me to manipulate, it gives me a lot more control with regards to my window sizes when I'm working across computers, across displays, and also trying to optimize for a horizontal and a vertical display. Obsidian just became the obvious answer, and it's just clean. I will say, Grim, I tried I did try IA Writer, which is this very simple like program. It has an elegant simplicity to it. It can do almost nothing, but I Obsidian I like just much better. I like you. There's so much more style options. And it just looks so much cleaner. I changed the basic fonts in Obsidian. Carson Thatcher, Grimleafer, can Obsidian help songwriters? Good question. I don't know. I'm not a songwriter. And Grim, you're talking to the person who actually wrote all the music here behind the asset and the genius. The connected web you can create with Obsidian is also very cool visually. Yeah, I love that connected web thing. I was watching some videos about that. So cool. So cool, the connected web. I'm excited. I just got started in Obsidian. We'll see how it evolves. Notion is still my brain, but Obsidian I'm using for all my presentations. I think it's the best for that. Also, Carson, welcome. It's great to have you, my brother. Let's check in. I'll let you know what we've been up to. So essentially what we are talking about today is Earth a female? Is the question, and we decided to talk about female in our own way. That's why we're adding the asterisks. We decided that it was archetypal and had to do with childbirth and cyclical fertility, embodied nourishment, and receptivity. We're not going to go back through all those terms, but that was how we described it. We described that it was clearly not a woman, a human woman or societal or have anything to do with modern identity vernacular. That's just not what the game we're playing. Earth equals female from a mythological perspective. The argument that Earth is a female from a mythological perspective, and remember that we're not doing religion or science today, that's next week, is the sky-earth dyad, which in 94% of cases feminizes the Earth. And we talked about how the sky-earth dyad is this concept that is overwhelmingly present, wherein at the very beginning of creation, two of the origin beings, one is the sky god and one is the earth god, and there is a severance between the earth and the sky, but between the terrestrial plane and the celestial plane. And in these cases, 94% of which the earth is feminine, which could not far beyond randomness. Okay. We also talked about how across 15 languages she's referred to as a she, Earth, being. And even in some of these languages, they don't even prescribe nouns to these. They don't prescribe genders to every single noun, so it's not like they're just having to pick between male or female for everything. Some of these don't gender nouns, and they specifically went out of their way to feminize the earth, right? And we're talking about Indo-European languages like Greek and Latin. We're also talking about Semitic languages like Aramaic, Hebrew, and we're also talking about Sino-Tibetan languages like Chinese. So this is really, really pervasive, the sheeing. And then we also talked about crossing varied social structures, not so interesting. Now, then we were talking about disproving all those points, right? So we were taking in earnest the opposite argument, and let's check in with the chat before I continue. When I pray in church growing up, I would say she instead of he when referring to God to make people mad. Yeah, it's interesting, Grim Maver, that you say that. That's one of the most interesting things one of the most interesting comments that's ever been said in this chat, because I think one of my biggest issues with organized religion right now is their conviction with a masculine God. I think that for me, when I think about a deity beyond our comprehension of that omnipotent scale that they're claiming, that is the one God to replace all gods, it seems quite unlikely to me that God would be gendered. To me, that God would actually be what is called epicene in this mythological register, and I'll explain what that word's epicene. It's extremely rare word, almost only used in academic context, and what it means is as of or pertaining to having both or neither gender, which is like light, right? So it's both gender, it's neither gender, because it's so both genders and neither genders and neither gender. It's neither gender, right? So it's beyond gender, like energy, something like that. And so I do believe that God is epicene. And my current understanding of God, which I continue to grapple with, is that God is an epicene entity and not a masculine entity. And so I wouldn't go around saying she just to piss people off, but you're obviously welcome to do that, Grim. But I would say that I am in alignment with you. Maybe I'm projecting a bit here, but I am aligned with this concept that God is simply a father up in heaven, is a masculine figure. To me, feels like human projection onto the divine. But we'll discuss that a bit later. So Carson, if you're still here, you goddamn legend. We will talk. We were now competing against these different ideas that we had with supporting the argument. We're now going against them. So we can say that the inversion with the dyad, the issue with the dyad is that Egypt has a dyad, which is a sky and an earth and a sky god, except that the earth god is Geb and he's male, and the Nut is the female goddess and she's the sky. So it's a complete inversion. And when we're looking for these universal patterns, having Egypt be the one that is disagreeing with you within your own framework is not good for the universal pattern. So 94% is very high, but with this very clear inversion of the of Egypt. Now, major cultures don't participate. All of Australia and sub-Saharan Africa pretty much don't participate. Not all of sub-Saharan Africa, but. And then we talked about how it's rejected by Abrahamic religions. We discussed how if God created the earth, he did not, the way that he presented it and created it doesn't appear to be a distinctly feminine being. It doesn't seem to have a consciousness. It seems to be a setting more than a divine being. And so if you happen to be a devotee of one of those Abrahamic religions, you would probably fall on the side of it not being a myth. So CT says, dyad, 2-tonal chord, triad, 3-tonal chord could be interesting parameter for certain myths sonically and future expansion. I couldn't agree more. And CT, I'm going to talk to you about that. I'm going to read his comment out loud, and then we're going to take a second to actually break it down mythologically. So, dyad, 2-tonal chord, triad, 3-tonal chord could be interesting parameter for certain myths, sonically and future expansion, i.e. music terms. Okay, so let me break this down. That's what Carson said, and he's the brilliant musician behind all of this. And let me explain why I actually think that that's so important. When we're talking about this, all of this, I really do believe that, you know, there's this duality, right? Light versus dark, night versus day, black versus white, right? But then there is the third state where those two things collide, right? And the whole universe can kind of be explained by saying, okay, for you have nothing, then you have one thing, then you have a duality of things, that black and white, and then everything comes out of that third thing where those two collide. The infinite levels of complexity emerge from that. Now, I want to take it one layer deeper and see if you guys can follow me here, because if we're talking about how everything can be described in that triality, right? But it can also, everything can also be described in that duality from the two-tone chords with regards to the universe. Now I'll explain why. If you look at computer programming, right, everything is just zeros and ones. And so let's say A is 0, 1, right? And B is 0, 1, 1, right? You can see how you can create complex strings of logic and knowledge, everything based on just yes or no, binary. Right? And then those complex things obviously create a third thing. And so when we talk about two tones to three tones, we're talking about elemental things, 0 things to 1 thing to 2 things to 3 things to 10,000 things is the mythic overtones. So it's 1 to 2 to 3 to 10,000. So CT, great to have you here. The absolute legend behind the music of The Outside In and this mythology project, which CT, by the way, is going great, and the hymns are going to be a huge part of it. And I know you're patient. You know how these creative works work, and you're a veteran at investing in a project that doesn't pay off for years. But I will say that the hymns that we're working on, that we have cooking, are still cooking. That's all I could say about that. I'm still deep in it. I'm still working deeply on it, as I think you can probably tell by today's subject matter, considering the first hymn that we worked on was called Mother. I think you can kind of tell that we're still in it, bro. We're still in it. We're still in it. Okay, let's continue with the argument against Earth being a female from a mythological perspective. So one thing to note when we are talking about this is if we think about, oftentimes when we think about Earth as like the mother goddess, we think about her in this sort of as the principal goddess in the sort of Native American singular tree of knowledge mother goddess. But primarily within all these religions that I've been talking about with the dyad, the sky earth dyad, she's primarily a secondary goddess. Might be back, team. We might be back. My internet cut out in the whole house. Are we back? Someone's in the chat. Want to shout out? We're back. Can't wait to have my own place. Looks like we are back. Sorry about that, team. Let's get back. We had a little momentum going. Damn, I had a good conversation going on here with Grim Hafer. PT 1088. Max Kurtzman, welcome back. I'm waiting for people to shuffle back in. Thank you so much, Max. We had a little outage here. I'm at my parents' house. We're making do. Thank you so much. And it's good to be back stateside. I loved Athens, but it got a little weird there. I got deep in my existential philosophies, deep in my thinking, and I was spending too much time alone and writing, and it's been good to be back with family, see some friends. And I'm starting to be ready to settle down some roots, Max. We're trying to settle down some roots and in New York, I think, and really get a studio set up for this whole production and get an apartment set up, maybe meet a nice lady. So the next phase, the vagabond phase is ending, and the established writer, working in tech sometimes, and having a dope studio study slash streaming studio is what we're doing. So I'm just giving people a sec to come back in. Not sure. We had a nice cruising velocity there, but looks like it's just me and you, Max. I'll walk you through where we. Sorry, this is people from the stream telling me I froze. We're overdue for a fit. Trying to get people back on here. We had a nice thing going. Max says we're overdue for a FaceTime. I'll hit you this week. I would love that, dude. I would love that. And let's get into the rest of these this mythology. I'll kind of give you an update on what it is that we're doing. So today we're talking about is the Earth a female? This is the 17th episode of Make Myth. And today we are going to talk about this from a mythological perspective. There's also a religious lens to answer this question of is the Earth female, or is it, an inert rock flying through space? So we did is we defined our female asterisk here because, obviously anything with gender can become quite a topic, and that's not what we're trying to hear. That's not what we're here to talk about. And so we talked about how our version of female is archetypal, which is these infinitely recurring symbols and ideas. So it's going to be about childbirth. It's going to be about cyclical fertility, the seasons versus, the menstrual cycles. It's going to be about embodied nourishment, like lactating, like milk versus, growing from the earth. And it's going to be about this concept of receptivity in these myths. This is the most complex and abstract of them, but it's really just this idea that that there is usually an actor and an acted upon, and usually the earth is the acted upon in almost all of these myths. So she is the receiver of love, receiver being chased, the pursued, those sorts of things. What we also made very clear, Max, is that in this case, for this equation that we're talking about, a female is not a woman. It's very much not a human woman. It's not chromosomal at all. It has nothing to do with societal roles, and has nothing to do with modern identity vernacular. So this has nothing to do with any of that. It's all to do with archetypes. And what was very interesting is we took the argument first for the Earth being a female, as we described from a mythological perspective. And so the most compelling evidence, the principal evidence, I would say, for the Earth being a female from a mythological lens is that the sky-earth dyad in 94% of cases feminizes the Earth. And what is that? We found in Indo-European mythology, in a huge number of myths, there is this sky-earth dyad where they're at the very origins of creation. There are two gods, one being the sky and one being the earth, and there's a severance between the terrestrial plane and the celestial plane, and that in these cases we find that 94% of the time the earth is feminine, and 94% of the time the sky is masculine, and that is just an overwhelming percentage. That is not a casual thing that could happen by chance. There is something that has to be underlying that. The next idea that we brought up was this concept that. Okay. The next concept we brought up was that it crosses 15 plus unrelated language families. And so what does that mean? A language family is essentially above even Latin and Greek. There's these languages, these origins of those languages that are called like Indo-European, for example, is where Latin and Greek come from. Semitic is where Aramaic and Hebrew come from. And in these languages, across 15 languages families, the earth is always feminized. And these language families came up entirely independently of each other, including the Sino-Tibetan language family, which is Chinese. And what is most interesting about a lot of these is that the earth is feminized even when in a lot of these languages, she's not even, these languages don't even prescribe gender to a noun. Right? They are just, they don't have that, la or el element of Espanol like that they are and they still went out of their way to feminize the earth. So it wasn't just picking between one or the other. And I think that's a very compelling bit of evidence there. And then also it crosses various societal structures like patriarchy and matriarchy. We find these myths. And so that's really the argument for the earth being a female from a mythological perspective. And now we're going to take the argument against. Okay. And so the argument against is that the earth, that within that dyad of the sky earth, there is a major inversion within that dyad, which is that Egypt has a sky earth dyad, but the it's actually inverted entirely, wherein Geb is the masculine god and he's the earth, and Nut is the sky goddess and she is the sky, right? And so that's the exact inversion of what we're saying, which is a feminine earth and a masculine sky. And when you have an inversion at the level of influence of Egypt, it's something that must be considered within the context of the data. So 94% makes it feel almost universal, but we also have to keep in context that it's not entirely universal, because we have an inversion even within that dyad of Egypt breaking away. There's also a lot of major cultures and stories that don't participate, like the Aboriginal Australians, as well as most cultures in sub-Saharan Africa. Grimhafer, great stream, brother. Be back again. Thanks so much, Grimhafer. So good to have you here, and thank you so much for contributing. And I'm sorry I dropped off, but you're so welcome to come back anytime, all times. The next thing, so major cultures, some cultures don't participate, so it's not entirely universal. The third thing we said that goes against it was that it's rejected by Abrahamic religions, right? So the way, if God created the heavens and the earth and he architected them in accordance to his liking, he did not create, as according to the Old Testament or New Testament, an earth that has any sort of personhood, any sort of consciousness. And so if you are a devotee of one of these Abrahamic religions, you're definitely, well, not definitely, but you are likely, from a mythological lens, going to disagree with the fact of Earth as a mother goddess. Now, another bit of context we talked about on the antagonizing side is that Earth is often seen as a secondary goddess, in that she is not the primary goddess. Demeter, we don't need to go back into the details of that. And then this is the last one that I really do want to dive into, which is let's just finish it. So Earth is a god, often a secondary goddess. Essentially, if you look at the Greeks, we have Gaia, right? She's the mother Earth, but she's really not as important as Hera or Demeter. And this shows up again in Hinduism, as well as a lot of the Norse mythologies. And so this last point is actually the most interesting, and it's about projected patriarchy, and how even asking this question by some feminist scholars could be considered patriarchal or misogynistic or participating in subversion. And I don't entirely agree with that, but I can make the argument compellingly, because the essay that I read was rather compelling, and it was by Sherry Ortner, and it said, is female to male as nature is to culture. And so what does that mean? So let's explain what her argument is, why this whole thing could be patriarchal. So what it does is it establishes, and this is not so crazy erudite woo-woo, right? This is a legitimate argument, and I think you just need to put your high IQ hats on and follow me for a second, right? So she's arguing this. She says that if female equals earth, if female equals nature, then man equals culture, okay? And if you, okay, so what's the problem with that? Following the logic, if man equals culture and woman equals nature, that then relegates women to the natural parts of childbirth and child rearing, and leaves them excluded from culture. Now it gets more interesting. So in addition to excluding them from the cultural side of life and relegating them to the reproductive realm, it also takes their labor for granted, right? It shows that, oh, you giving birth to children is like fruit growing on trees, or you taking care of the home and nourishing children. It is not rewarded as valuable work, because it is taken as if it's assumed. Okay. The next one is that it entitles it demonstrates an entitlement for men to have with women's bodies, right? So if we believe that culture deserves to exist and we should continue propagating culture and expanding our culture, and if Earth is nature, right? So then it's this kind of belief that we should be continuing to expand our culture. Man should continue to be reaching over to be claiming more of the natural world, claiming more of woman. And I think that by far the most interesting actually part of this whole thing to me is what that means for the role of women with regards to mythology. And I'm going to explain what that means, and I hope you all can follow me here. So if man if Earth is female, if Earth is female, then woman is nature and man is culture. Okay, if woman is nature and man is culture, then what it gives to men, let me see how to explain this. One second. So if Earth is nature, then man is culture. If man is culture, then men get to inherit, what they get to receive is this concept of ascending, of becoming, of going out and taming the wilds, and making known the unknown, and conquering. And there is this opportunity for ascension of a culture, of a man, of a hero, to go out and do that. Whereas it restricts the female role to one of settling in, to one being like, oh, I'm always going to be a mother, and this is just my role, is to just kind of fill in and settle into that feminine role. And so if you say that female is nature and male is culture, then you are limiting females from that ascension realm of that culture can achieve, that messianic principle of like, oh, culture can ascend, can create something new, can make something of themselves that is entirely different and shape themselves. Whereas for women, it limits their options to settling into what was kind of already designed for them. Okay, so let's bring it into my conclusions now. Max, I have to run, but this is fantastic. Can't wait to be back for more and catch up this week. Appreciate that, Max. So good to have you here. I'll be here every Sunday, and would love to hear from you. Talk soon, brother. So my conclusion, from a mythological perspective, this is what I think. That Earth is female, is a dominant pattern across cosmic arguments. I really do think that it is a dominant pattern. I think that the language argument is very difficult to argue against, that they use the she pronouns against across all those different languages and all these different mythologies is incredibly compelling. In addition, I do think that we need to add the caveat that it isn't universal, that there is that there are examples where that's not the case, where even if it is the case, she is often, not the protagonist. She's not the center of the story. That she's just a small, one of the the celestial creations of a greater universe. And I also think that it's interesting to note, we live in a world, primarily driven and run by Abrahamic religions, and in this case, I think it is interesting that in my research, I think the case became rather clear that the Abrahamic religions do not believe in this. Now, one interesting note about that, as far as the Abrahamic religions goes, is that when you talk about Earth in the Abrahamic religion sense, in that first line, in the beginning God's created the heavens and the earth, you have the earth being eretz, which is a feminine word, and shamayim, which is the skies, which is a masculine word. And so even though we're saying that the Abrahamic religions are not 100% participating in this myth the way that we would have asked them to, that not that we would have asked them to in the way that we would have expected necessarily, we can say that they're definitely not going against it, because there is a severance of sky and water, and there is that gendering of the language in there. So that is my conclusion, and we're going to go ahead and write today. And what we're going to do is we're going to write. We're going to consider, if Earth is female, what does she wish for? What is it that she wants? So that's what we're going to do. I think I'm gonna, before we dive into the writing, I'm gonna blast through this presentation one more time for potentially just like a faster version for VOD after the fact and clips. So since while we're here, we already have the stuff, and it also work as a good summary for people. So hello, and welcome back, everyone. I'm Werner, and I'm going to be your host today for Make Myth 17, the 17th episode of the season. We are a new streamer, but we are warming up here. 17 episodes, definitely getting into it. And today we're going to be talking about whether or not the Earth is a female, and we're going to be taking a look at that from a mythological perspective. In future episodes, we're going to be talking about it from a religious and scientific perspective. But for today, we are looking at it exclusively from a mythological perspective. We're going to break down what the actual question is, and then we're going to talk about our definition of female for the sake of this exercise, and then we're going to talk about the arguments for and against, and then we're going to take a little break and do a little bit of writing. So where we talk about, let's talk about the question first. Earth equals female. Why even ask it? Is it a rock in space? Why even ask this question? Is it even a reasonable question to ask? Is it like asking, is Tuesday tall, right? It's you're talking about a planet, you're talking about a rock. There's no way you can even prescribe it a gender. That's a clear projection. That it would be one argument, and yet there is evidence to say, there is evidence to point to a femininity to the Earth, and we're going to explore the mythological evidence of that today. So as far as female, asterisk, where we don't want to step on any toes here with regards to gender identity or anything like that. Our version of female that we're going to be talking about is archetypal. We're talking about timelessly recurring things, symbols, and ideas that pop up across cultures, across languages, even if they have no contact, that are baked into our souls, into our biology, into our DNA, into our spines, however you want to say it. And so these are going to be concepts related to childbirth, gestation, actual wombs, and then we're going to talk and anything to do with cyclical fertility, right? So there's going to be menstruation or seasonal fertility, embodied nourishment. This is anything to do with lactation. This is anything to do with rivers, creating fruits, creating different foods and grains from the waters. So for this case, female does not equal a woman, a chromosome. In this case, for our purposes, a woman is not a female is not a woman. She's not a human, and so we can't be projecting that onto her. This is not going to be chromosomal, societal, or have anything to do with modern identity vernacular. Our primary evidence pointing to the fact that Earth is female, according to mythology, is the sky-earth dyad, which is to say that oftentimes in a huge number of mythologies, we have the two of the original gods, one being a sky and one being the earth, forming a dyad, a pair, and in 94% of these cases, the earth is feminized, roughly 94%. We also talked about how I think this summary is a little bit boring. I think we kind of got through it, team. We're gonna get through it, but our ultimate finale here, the ultimate concept, is that we believe that Earth is female, is being female is a dominant pattern across cosmic iconic myths that is proven. We can also say that it's not universal, and we can also say that for devotees of Abrahamic religions, it is not aligned with that. They would probably want to reject that. Okay, so now we're gonna take a quick little break, and then we're gonna get into our writing. Today, our writing goal is we're gonna consider if Earth is female, what does she wish for? So we'll take a quick break, and then I'll come back and we'll get into some writing. Flying through space, or it cozy little stream. It's going to be a higher brow stream today. You'll see a little bit of a change. We're shifting towards. All right. Welcome back, everybody. We've had a great day so far, doing a little bit more of an intellectual exercise, walking through some of the research that I've conducted in my pursuit of truth, in my pursuit of these mythological myths and understanding them and understanding where what aligns and what doesn't across mythologies, understanding where these stories come from and how they've influenced different cultures. And I think that Earth plays a surprisingly small role in our mythology and in our world view and in our religions. I think that she is what we all share in the most tangible possible way, and she is really a gem floating out there in a wide open space. And it's not to say that we're entirely alone, but it is to say that Earth is extremely extraordinarily special, and that if she is feminine, whatever that is, that means by the end of our argument, by the end of our discussions, then what does that mean? What does she want? What is it that makes her tick? What is it that if makes her what does she desire, right? Because women want things, men want things, right? Planets not necessarily, but if she's feminine, then maybe she has some attributes that we can attribute to her that are human in a certain sense, or personified. So I think what we want to do today is think a little bit about that. I think take a second to imagine that it's going to be a different writing day. We don't have a specific chapter that we're working on. You all know that I'm working on these 7 cosmogonic myths, and I'll be continuing to update you all on that. But today I really just want to think about together what it means if a planet is a woman, let's actually think through that, and thinking through it like a writer or a myth writer, or whatever you want to call someone like me who's trying to tell a timeless tale, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about her as a character, like as a person, Earth, and we'll kind of assign her attributes, and we'll also kind of talk about her different wills and her different wishes and her wants. So We can start here by saying physical attributes, right? Actually, the question is, what does she want? So let's say, what does she want? Okay, so what does she want? I think the first thing when we're talking about what a woman wants, right? And remember, we're not speaking about every woman, we're speaking about a woman, right? And we can't be so afraid that not everybody fits that you can't make generalizations because not everything is the same. And sometimes you can't, generalizations can help, especially when you're taking in this mythic register, when you're talking about deep blocks of time, large blocks of time, eras, ages, eons. We need to be able to generalize a little bit in order to have meaningful conversations. And so when we say, what does she want? We are going to try to gender this, but that's not to say that every one of her desires is going to be gendered, but it is to say that maybe it is that men and women might want something different. We'll see how by the end of our exercise, how we feel about that. So what does she want? I think the first thing that she's going to want is to survive, right? To live, right? I think if we think about this as kind of like a hierarchy of needs, I think the first thing she's going to want to do is to exist. I think that she doesn't want to die. I don't think that she wants to be swallowed by nothingness. I don't think she wants to not exist in space. Don't think she wants to stop her orbit. I think she wants to continue existing. So to survive would probably be her first need, her first desire. Now, I would say the second desire for a mother, right, if we're considering her a mother, would be that her for on behalf of her children. But if we're thinking about her as a woman, I don't think it's fair to assume that she begins her life as a mother. I think that womanhood doesn't begin at birth. You begin as a daughter, you begin as a child. And so let's try to consider what it might be like if you are an earth and you are a daughter, and what it is that you might want in that circumstance. So if we are in that circumstance and Earth is a daughter, who is she born to? So in our story, Earth is born to the sun. So what would Earth know about, right? So Earth would know that the dark is cold and scary and that she doesn't want anything to do with that, and that she would know that the light is love and happiness and good, and she would definitely want a lot to do with that. And so I think maybe what her first like elemental desire would probably be to be more like the sun, right? Or to be more like the sun, to be loved by the sun, to be more like the sun. I think we grow up and there's something that we want to be like. There are emblems of what could be, what should be, and I think she might want to become more like or more like the sun. So. And I think we can say if she wants to become more like the sun, I think it's also fair to say she wants to become less like the dark. I think those kind of work well together. So what next? I want to live. I want to be more like the sun. I want to be less like darkness. These are good. These are good elemental, like planetary visions, desires. And I think a young daughter or young son can relate to the idea of growing up and wanting to be a little bit more like their parent, you know? Um, but I think that there needs to be something else that she wants. Beyond like moving right into wanting things for her children, like what does she like? Uh, I think she likes to be beautiful, to be seen as beautiful, right? And I think that little girls, little boys, little kids want attention, right? They want to be seen. And I do think that the desire to be beautiful and the delight that comes from being beautiful is more feminine than it is masculine. Just the delight you could see when the girl feels beautiful, feels pretty, and when gets a good compliment that they know somebody else means. Um, and so I think to be beautiful, but in order to be seen, in order to be beautiful, she needs to be beheld as beautiful, right? Because if you're beautiful and there's no one there to see it, if you get all dolled up, if you're wearing every single chain, but you're in the house, then uh, your beauty is not beheld, and then it is it real, right? I think her desire is not just to be beautiful, not just to, but also to be beheld as beautiful. And I think that that's an interesting distinction. So we can add that to our notes. Okay. So we're building her like hierarchy of needs, right? And so we've said, okay, she wants to be, and we're doing this in real time together too. This is us. And obviously you're all welcome to chime in. I love the music we made for this so much. Let's continue our thinking. So we're taking down the argument. We're writers right now, right? We're thinking, okay, if the Earth is a woman, what does she want? Because if she's just a planet, if she's just a rock, she probably doesn't want anything. But if she's a woman, maybe she has desires, maybe she has wills. And the first thing that we thought that she probably would want to do is survive. I think she would want to live. I think she would want to exist. The next thing that we said is that children want to be like their parents, and we said that the Earth was born of the sun. We considered that maybe she would want to be more like the sun, and in order to be more like the sun, she would have to be less like the dark, right? And that would make her afraid of her shadow. So to become less like the dark, therefore ashamed of shadow. Okay, so but in addition to saying that she's just ashamed of the shadow, we could say that she does, if we're talking about her desires, then what does she want? To remove her shadow, right? So to survive, we could say is to shed her shadow. Guys, we had some nice conversation and rhythm going, and then my internet cut out. We're in this for the long haul, and we're getting used to getting to empty rooms when we have to. We'll have a solid writing session no matter what. So, to survive, to shed her shadow because she wants to become more like the sun. This is the cozy part of the stream. So, doing some work, we're just thinking out loud. To be beheld as beautiful. That seems like a very reasonable goal for a daughter, for an Earth daughter, right? By who? By her brothers, right? Those could be her brother's siblings. The other planets. She could also be beheld by the sun, right? She could also be beheld by the different creatures that are all about her, right? I think the first one is obviously going to be by the sun, because sun rays shine, they reflect back, obviously, right? But I think it is worth considering who else she would want to be beheld as beautiful by, and I think her children also she would want to be beheld as beautiful by. I think that tracks for me. Um, is there anything else you would want? And like, so what would you want from her brothers? What would a sister want from her brothers? Would she want to be like them? Not necessarily sure. I think she maybe likes being different, but maybe she feels a little ostracized. Maybe she wants a sister. Uh, maybe she wants a sister. That could be interesting. She has only brothers right now. She has only brother planets. So maybe she wants a sister. Okay, so I'm trying to think. Does she want anything for her siblings? What does a daughter really want? Does she want her siblings to succeed? Does she want them to fail? Let's give her the benefit of the doubt. Say she's benevolent. She wants them to succeed. So what does she want for them? She wants them to become like light, like her, more like the sun. If they're masculine, she's feminine. Does she want to be more similar? Does she want contradicting things? Does she want to be the same and she wants to be different? To be like and unlike her brothers. Right, she could say that she wants both. Right now, she's only unlike them. And she wants to be both like and unlike. I think on one hand, that increases complexity, and on the other hand, it's actually quite interesting because I don't think all of our goals always make complete sense. So we're just brainstorming here. I don't think she wants a sister. I think that's a little bit of a stretch here. You think she likes being the only daughter? It's a lot of pressure. I can imagine her being jealous of another daughter, though. Does she like being the only daughter? Good question. So these are the open questions. Does she like being the only daughter? Does she want to be like her brothers? Unlike them? Both? Neither? Kind of fuck with this font. I like streaming, guys. That's good. That's good. She's the only daughter. Does she want a sister? I'm not sure she does. She's different from her brothers. Maybe she wants to be more similar to them, but also she likes being distinct. So it's a little bit contradictory, but that could be aligned with the feminine nature of not 100% knowing exactly what she wants. I think that works. Now, what does daughter Earth want, right? And then we can say, what does Mother Earth want, right? For her children to survive. What else does she want, Mother Earth? I think so. She wants for her children to survive, right? So she wants to survive. She inherits everything from above, right? So I don't think she outgrows any of these. Although maybe ultimately when she's a grandma, she's gonna outgrow some of it, you know? I think she likes for her children to drink of her. I think there's a satisfaction she's gonna get with all this beautiful sweetness and richness that she has. If she likes to be beheld as beautiful, right, then it's fair to say, I think it's fair to say that if she has all these sweet waters that she would like for them to be drank of, right, that she would want to be participated in that way. And so what does she want for her children, right? For them to become themselves. Become themselves, right? Become who they're meant to be, become themselves. Become themselves, right? It's interesting to be here, 17 streams in. Still feeling good about the vision, even though it's changed so much. Still feeling hopeful, even though we haven't had a lot of growth. Still feeling positive, even though we had some momentum today and then the stream crashed. It's like I'm streaming to an empty room. There's not a single person in here right now, but I'm so happy to be here. I'm so proud of myself for still being in this. There's a million reasons not to stream every day. There's a million reasons logistically why it's annoying and difficult and challenging. But here we are, and put a bunch of time into preparing the stream for you all. First more prepared stream like this, and I feel pretty good about how it went. I'm gonna watch back and try to learn from it, see if we can't continue to improve and make something out of this. I think it's a good exercise for me to be delivering something every week, and if I'm delivering something every week writing wise, I think that's just a good habit to have, in addition to my other writing stuff that I'm always going to be doing. So yeah, let's continue. So stand before a dying son and know no shame. So she went before a dying son and she felt shame, right? So she felt like she wanted to be more like light, like she wanted to be less like dark. And so she wants her children to not feel that same shame. I think these two can be merged. Drink of her to become themselves. Is there anything? What else does a mother want? Anything specific of the father? That's enough for the mother. Let's talk about Grandma Earth. And if we talk about grandma, we got to talk about great grandma. See if there's any difference between them. So what's the difference between a grandma and a mom? If a mom wants it for her children, maybe she wants it for all children. If a grandma wants it for all daughters, she probably wants it for all mothers also. Is it all of them, or is it? I'm not necessarily sure that's true. It's kind of like if you're a grandma on one hand, you want everyone's children to succeed, but you also have this understanding that it's more about the group and less about each individual. That everyone's individual role matters less than the collective health. And I think that there's a nuance there that I would like to reconcile. Hmm. Sometimes the spirit, this spirit is a lot of just like a beard stroking, you know. They can I think she's really going to be concerned about future generations, grandma, and past generations. All right. Like I think if we think about the difference between a daughter and a mother, she's going from thinking more about herself to thinking more about her kids. Now we're trying to think about the transition from mother to grandma, and I think that it's more nuanced. Like she's going to be concerned with continuity across future generations and with memories of past generations, right? She wants them to learn from their mistakes. She doesn't want them to repeat the same mistakes. I think that's what the grandma really wants. But she also might want something for her mother, right? Because her mother has already gone through her whole thing. She's seen her kids have kids, right? Less focused on her children, right? Versus all children. Right? Great grand. I was gonna say, should I consider great grandma, but it just feels like that's a stretch. I feel like I should be able to accomplish it all, and uh, made a mother crown. You know, I know there's a lot of issues with made a mother crown, but it is a clean three faces. We like that. Um, we like that for storytelling. Just checking something really quick, and I'll be back in 1 second. Yeah, that works. Okay, Tim, I think we're gonna do some games. We discussed what we thought she might want from a daughter perspective, from an from a mother perspective, and from a grandma perspective. We went through our arguments from a mythology perspective about Earth, and whether or not we thought from that perspective she was feminine. And now we spent some time just sketching, thinking about her as an actual person and going through the different stages of her life and what she might actually want. And it's been about 2 hours. We had a crash in the middle of our stream, which really killed our momentum. But we take one day at a time, and we do the best we can. And now I think we're gonna play some games. Wrap up strong. All right, we'll run one dunge, and then call it for the day. I'll do some separate writing. I'll watch back the clips, try to see if we got anything good. I'm getting better, man. It's not so easy broadcasting. I'm not exactly the most social guy these days, so it's out of my comfort zone, but I also do love it, so kind of right in that perfect sweet spot. Then I want Seats, Skyreach. Algathar is fine. Nexus Point is fine. SR15 is fine. SR15 it is. Mm-hmm. All right, let's run it, boys and gals. $15 Mesara, easy. I'm taking some damage. No. So close. Come on. Don't all wipe. No. Look how close they would have fucking died before we started eating shit. Four deaths. I think it's still. It's not completely cooked. We need to pull that. My friends are out. It's like supposed to be really good, but I'm always afraid you're not supposed to pull that, and then it always gets pulled, or like most of the time. Makes this route like less effective than it should be, but that happens with some regularity. But we're handling it okay. I can't wait to get my own place. Just have the dopest internet of all time. Flat, proper boom mic. I think it's hard. It's my mom.
Been pretty locked in, pretty quiet. What we got? Doing pretty good. First pull was questionable. I think the healer's struggling to keep up a little bit. I forgot to tell them we were live. Oftentimes people in the group will come in and hang. People like being on stream. Such a small stream, they wouldn't be that stoked, but they'd swing by. Just take forever to kill at this level. I almost dropped there. Got hit by that wave one. Lol. Just got knocked up there. Wait, what? Man, these guys are taking forever to die. Bro. The double knock up is nuts. I'm in the way, that's what. I don't think it's supposed to take this long. I know it's supposed to take a while. I kind of just ran into that. Not gonna lie. Come on. Die. Getting out of hand. Easy. Not easy, but we got it done. Yeah, that was not fast. I need to be way faster now. If he rise the healer, are we all live? You guys are annoying to move because they cast non-stop. Rip.
Rippity rip. All right, team. This was a fun stream. Thanks for swinging by. Thanks for hanging with me through the technical difficulties. We'll come back with the next session from about is Earth female from a religion and scientific perspective next week. And until then, I bid you Godspeed.